Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin, and in today's video I want to take a close look at the rogue talents and the PvP class talents and talk about which talents are good and which ones I guess you can see stay in the game, but which ones should take another look before the game comes out on 30th. While most of the talents are fairly useful, there are some talents that I just don't think are all that great, and I think they could do maybe a rework, maybe a repositioning of certain talents in different areas to make for a more of a choice. Because sometimes most of the talents just feel like, oh, you have, these three crappy options and one good one. I might as well go with a good one because there's nothing else to do about it. I feel like if we get more options in terms of choices, then we'll have more ways of playing the rogue, more different things we can do as rogues, no matter if you play an outlaw, subtlety, or assassination. And I feel like the idea of choice is an awesome idea, and the more choice we have in the game, the better. Don't mind the hair, I look like a shark. Besides that, let's get on to the video. So first one I want to start taking a look at is the Outlaw Rogue. First we're going to take a look at the class talents, then we'll take a look at the PvP talents. With the class talents, we got to understand that these are the talents that will also be used. We got to understand these talents are going to be used in PvE as well. So the class talents need to be applied for raiding environment as well. So those you have to have some leniency on, but also you have to have some experience of what how rogue might use it in terms of PvE situation. And I've had a bit of a experience in PvE. I wouldn't say extensive one, but for the most part, it's not like you have some amazing specific role as a rogue. Although usually rogues are basically a survivalist. They can avoid certain mechanics thanks to abilities like cloak, talents of cheat of death. You're able to reduce potential impact of some of the mechanics in a raid and ignore some to a certain extent. You usually have a pretty decent ability to get across like areas where there's fire, and you're there to deal a high amount of DPS on the target. So we're going to take a look at the class talents with involvement of PvE talents, and then we'll take a look at the PvP talents with a strict thought of PvP. At level 30 talent, I don't really know how I can use acrobatic strikes for PvE or for PvP. I'm not really sure if it will be any good in PvE. Maybe specific fights where it can be used, but if acrobatic strikes is only useful for specific situations, I feel like maybe that ability could be adjusted a little. Maybe something else, maybe the yard range could be increased to like 5 yards instead of 3, because then it'll give you a little bit more of an impact. Maybe even increase the 3 yard to a 7 yard or 8 yards. Give some actual reach for Outlaw Rogue, which will be a little bit weird to think about it, but then we do have classes like Enhancement Shaman that has a bit of reach for abilities, especially during when they get some cooldowns. They get a bit of a more extended reach in terms of some of the spells that they can use. I feel like acrobatic strikes could be a little bit stronger, because I don't really know a PvE or PvP situation where you would just not grab hit and run or grapple and hook. So I would buff acrobatic strikes to make it a bit of a better talent. At the level 75 talent tree, I guess first of all these talents are pretty bad for PvP. I guess the only one that kind of offers you any potential is Dirty Tricks. It takes away the cost of all of your abilities such as Blind, Cheap Shot, Sap, and Gouge. So you have no energy cost on those, which is nice for PvP. But like Prey in the Way could have been better if it included something like a between the eyes in the description for it, because you don't get 10% damage increase with between the eyes on your target. So then for PvP, it's just like, it could be better. I don't know how I feel about it though. And then we have Parlay, which I feel like is so utterly useless. It replaces your blind as a rogue with Parlay, but Parlay functions like a sap. Sap that can only be used on a target that's not in combat. So for PvE, what would you ever use Parlay for PvE? Most parts for PvE, if you do need to get a sap on a target, you do the saps before the fight begins, because as soon as the fight starts, there's not much you can do from there. The fight begins, and in most cases all the mobs are already in combat. Same thing for PvP. Once you already begin the fight, Parlay is utterly useless. The only time you need a sap is before the fight begins, before anybody gets in combat. So I feel like Parlay is kind of bad. I feel like the whole level 75 tree is bad, and maybe Parlay could be buffed, and Prey in the Way could have in between the eyes in there. It would give a bit more functionality for PvP at least. I don't really know how this talent tree could be used for PvE or PvP. I guess it's just a convenience for a rogue in terms of leveling. Out of the third row of PvP talents, Boarding Party. It's between a choice between Cut to the Chase, Maneuverability, and Boarding Party. Cut to the Chase can make sense because it's passive movement increase buff. It basically gives you a hit and run as an Outlaw Rogue and any other spec of rogue. So maybe hit and run combined with Cut to Chase wouldn't be all that great. But Cut and Chase is fine, Maneuverability is fine, it's just Boarding Party, I don't know how I feel about it. Between the eyes increases the movement speed of all friendly players within 10 yards by 30% for 5 seconds. between the eyes increases movement speed of all friendly players. I do hope that they are reading this ability, or the way the rogue disability to work is, the rogue that uses between the eyes on a target increases movement speed of everybody around the rogue by 30% for 5 seconds. That would be a better option, because then let's say you're stunning a healer and you're in an RBG team and you get a bunch of people to run over to the healer and burst him down, take him out of the equation really quickly. If the between the eyes works around the person who gets stunned, that's not that great of an option, because everybody who's around the person who gets stunned already has, you know, uptime on whoever's getting stunned. So there's no point of buffing their movement speed. I feel like that could be rewarded to make it a little bit better. I wouldn't even use this in arenas in order to give movement speed to like a red pally. Honestly, I would give up maneuverability for every time I stun, paladin gets a little bit movement speed. And I think the rest of the tree is actually pretty good. I kind of like the whole turn the table on among thieves and thickest thieves. I like the take a cut, controllers king juke up my hardies, and cheap tricks, dismantle, plunder armor. It gives Outlaw Rogue an option to be like more of a trickster CC, or a choice of self buffs versus friendly buffs. Like for example, controllers king is self buffs for polymorphs and stuns to give yourself a general rush. But if you're playing a team that needs a little bit of healing, you can go Crimson Vial or take a cut to increase their haste. So any classes that benefit highly from haste, like a red paladin or basically every other healer and dot based casters like Affliction Warlock and Shadow Priest, they could use this. So I kind of like the whole talent tree. Right, let's take a look at the Assassination Rogue tree, and I had a few gripes with that before. I'll talk about them, mostly in the PvP talent tree, but PvE should be just fine too. Let's take a look at that. At level 60, the specific talent of Leeching Poison, I feel should be adjusted. Maybe for PvE, losing Crippling Poison is fine, but for PvP, to lose one of your slows in the game, one of your best slows, one of your only slows really, is kind of devastating. As an Assassination Rogue, you don't really have that much CC, so having like an uptime slow at all times is beneficial for you overall. So I feel like Leeching Poison should be added into Crippling Poison, so you still have that slow plus a 10% leech. 10% leech isn't a lot, let's be honest. It's just a little bit of leech. It's not that much health gain. Like maybe in a really good situation, like in a BG when you have no health but you have dots on everybody and birds going out everywhere, only then might you see some actual health regen. But even with the energy regeneration of Assassination Rogue, you're not going to be able to really get everybody dotted and put out insane amount of like AoE pressure. So I feel like Leeching Poison should tag into your Crippling Poison. I feel like it'll make it better for PvE and PvP. It would be at least somewhat of a handy option for PvP, because then you still get the slow, but you also get the leech, so you can kind of incorporate like a kiting mechanic where you kite an enemy and you get some leech. And for PvE, you're giving up cheat death and elusiveness, going for the 10% heal. The slow doesn't really function at all to begin with. It won't function on like bosses, so it won't even matter. The slow will function on certain ads though, so it won't buff Assassination in terms of PvE, because slows aren't bad in my opinion. I don't think they'll be game breaking, but that's just my only option. I kind of like Thuggy. Resets the remaining cooldown of Garrod when your target dies. I guess that's a PvE thing and you can use it in a raid on multiple different bosses, but I guess I can't complain. I just don't like it. I don't see. I guess that's the way to go about it. Like, since you can't internal bleeding somebody in a raid and you can't use Prey in the Weak to make him 10% more damage, I guess Thuggy would be the way to go to. If an ad dies, get Gorilla back and you can pin it on another ad. Now for the PvP talents, and I've taken a look at them, and they did modify a good amount of talents here and there since like the beginning of beta, the very first talent tree. I feel like on the maneuverability and cut to the chase, intent to kill is not that good of an ability, and some people might look at it and say, oh, that's really good. Your Shadow Step cooldown is reduced by 66% when using a target marked by a Vendetta. The cooldown on Shadow Step is 30 seconds. It reduces with the reduction for cooldown, it reduces your cooldown of Shadow Step to about 10 seconds. 10-second Shadow Step I guess is alright, but Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced by 66 when used on a target marked for a Vendetta. If this said that while Vendetta is up, the Shadow Step cooldown is reduced, then you'll be able to use Shadow Step a couple more times. Actually, for the duration of Vendetta, you'd be able to use it 3 times if you are managing it properly, because Vendetta only lasts 20 seconds. But because it says Shadow Step cooldown is reduced when used on a target marked by Vendetta, it kind of limits your mobility, and it ties your mobility, like compared to maneuverability and cut to the chase, it ties your mobility to a 1.3 minute cooldown. Cut to the chase can be used at all times, not accounting for slows, which kind of diminish the effect of it, and maneuverability is tied to a 50-second cooldown, so maneuverability is the way to go. There's no really point to go to intent to for intent to kill, so I feel like they should buff it by making it so that Shadow Step can be used as long as Vendetta is available. Shadow Step cooldown is reduced by 66%. At least it'll make it viable. I don't know how good it'll make it'll make Shadow Step. It might actually make it broken, but that's a better option than like just, I mean, maneuverability is just better. I just want to see some buffs to intent to kill, and if they could buff it, maybe the Shadow Step like reduction as long as the Vendetta is up might be a way to solve it. It might make it viable during burst, so you can, let's say, kick a bunch of players, like kick, step kick, step kidney, you know, throw some kind of CC as an assassination roll, maybe do, you know, be able to have a lot more maneuverability while you are in Vendetta phase or Vendetta burst. Otherwise, I just feel like, I don't know, this talent is kind of lame duck. And the very last tree, you got Crippling Venom, System Shock, and Flying Daggers. Crippling Venom adds a venom to a target, and as long as you keep moving, you're adding that nature damage onto them. So technically you can have nature damage in 3 different parties. Great for spirit pressure, great for targets that are running from you, great for battlegrounds. System Shock adds a bit of a burst to it, casting in venom with at least 5 comp points on a target afflicted by corrode, rupture, and lethal poisons. Deal 99k nature damage and reduces movement speed of a target by 90% for 4 seconds. And those 2 abilities are great. One of them is for a bursty mechanic for a more hammered in burst, the other is for more of a slow base damage. But then you got in the middle Flying Daggers. Phantom Knives deals 150% more damage when it strikes 3 or more targets. When you take a look at the tooltip of Phantom Knives, it sprays knives at all targets within 10 yards, dealing 20k damage. And applying your active poisons at their normal rate, awarding 1 comp point. You grab for Flying Daggers, the damage is increased by... The damage amounts to about 50k every time you do a Phantom Knives. And I guess 50k is okay, it is half a 50k worth of damage. How much percentage damage is that for health actually? We get about 2 million health when we're in a BG. Is it 2%? I think so far it says 2% on the good old calculator. But I'm gonna check in on that. So it deals a very, very small amount of damage for Phantom Knives. System Shock is definitely better, and so is Creeping Venom. Why is Flying Daggers in there? It's not like Assassination has like some amazing ability to give yourself some crazy AoE build or anything. You don't really have that potential, to be honest, as Assassination. Flying Daggers, I feel like it's just there just to be there. And I also don't like the condition where it says when it strikes 3 or more targets. If it said something like 2 or more targets, I feel like it would be a better option because you can kind of sort of put pressure onto different targets. Maybe if they made it so Flying Daggers has Phantom Knives always apply a poison, that would be a better option together, because then you would be able to apply some like agonizing poison on all the AoE targets, and then when you go bleed them up, they already have the 4 stacks, and it'd be easier to keep up stacks on multiple different targets, because then at least you would apply you some kind of a build and some kind of a playstyle. But Flying Daggers is just utterly useless for PvP in my opinion. So I would actually like to change. I was gonna say something about Mind Numbing Poison and talk a bit about Shiv, but I'll leave those. I mean, that's not as bad of a talent tree as like the last one for PvP. Alright, let's talk about Subtlety and we'll finish off the video. Alright, Subtlety talent tree is, I feel like, a little bit better. There's a lot more options, and I guess there's not that many bad talents in my personal opinion. For the most part, class talents is basically how you want to play. None of them are really bad for Subtlety. I can't even think of one that's really bad. Technically, most of them can be used for PvE and PvP, so I think I'll leave the talent tree, the class talent tree for Subtlety, completely alone. I don't see anything that I would really want to change. The honor talent tree, I need to take another look at it. Like, for example, what I like about Subtlety is the silhouette. Shadow Step cooldown is reduced by 50% when cast on a friendly target, allows you for some maneuverability, but it's the silhouette, so it allows you to be able to get back to a friendly. But Subtlety already has enough mobility, so engaging an enemy is easy, but silhouette will allow you to disengage the enemy a lot more often, allowing you more of a playstyle. But it's just mostly because Subtlety has so much mobility in the game as is, silhouette works, while for Assassination, their intent to kill talent is just not quite as good. I actually am looking maybe to see Veil of Midnight buffed a little. Cold Blood I can definitely see being so useful for PvP. Daggers in the Dark I haven't got to try, but 100% more damage from a Shadow Strike would actually be a lot of damage. I just don't know if it's worth the wait half the time. Veil of Midnight on the other hand, you remain enveloped in shadows for 2 seconds after coming out of stealth, increasing dodge chance by 100. I just don't know. I feel like that should be buffed a little more. It's just a dodge chance against melee and it's so specific. For the most part, running away from casters or melee for subtlety shouldn't be too much of an issue. And as long as you're rotating your cooldowns, again, you shouldn't really need that extra dodge. I don't really know any of melee classes that are just super overpowering. Maybe tanks, but like I just can't see myself using Veil of Midnight in most cases. I think Cold Blood is the best option for the most part. I mean, damage increase, 12% of the enemy's total health is shadow damage. So it's damage. Dagger in the Dark can be used in certain cases for damage. Veil of Midnight has like this defensive matter in terms of opening up on your target. But most of the times you open up with like a cheap shot. I don't know, maybe in specific 3s arenas where people are just trying to shut down the rogue and you open up and you get that evasion, maybe then that could work. I would take a look at Veil of Midnight, maybe buff it to the point where it's like, oh, all three options are viable. And right now I'm just looking at Cold Blood or Dagger in the Dark. I haven't really seen people use Shadowy Duel. I don't really know if it's any good, and everything I might say just might be complete BS here, and that's completely fine. I will take the fall for this one. Shadowy Duel, you lock your target into a duel containing shadows, removing you both of you from the eyes of onlookers for 6 seconds, allows access to stealth-based abilities. 2-minute cooldown, 50 energy. I feel like this could be used, see a buff, because it's simply I just haven't seen it used. 50 energy is a lot to invest into from beginning, but that's completely fine. It does allow you to access to stealth-based abilities for 6 seconds. But currently, my Shadow Dance allows me access to all stealth-based abilities for 3 seconds. But if I take Phantom Assassin... so normally Shadow Dance allows me access to stealth-based abilities for 3 seconds. Phantom Assassin allows me to extend it to 6 seconds, and I don't need to spend energy. So with Shadowy Duel, you spend 50 energy to gain the buff of Phantom Assassin, and you don't get Symbols of Death with it. But for the next 6 seconds, you have the target and you away from the eyes of onlookers, just you and them to have a Shadowy Duel. I don't really know how good this is. I don't really know how would you be able to use it properly. Maybe you would use it to like take yourself and another person out of the PvP equation for just a moment, like a healer trying to save a DPS, and hope that your DPS is enough damage to kill whoever you were trying to kill. Or maybe have you be able to burst somebody down very quickly. I just don't know how I feel about this ability. It's just too much of an energy investment, too long of a cooldown for someone like a Phantom Assassin, which can be used on a fly and rewards you for even more of a buff than you would normally get. I just don't know. Shadowy Duel I could see use a buff, maybe a reduction on the cooldown and energy. Maybe even have a damage increase while Shadowy Duel is available, because it's basically like a Phantom Assassin, but Phantom Assassin gives you a buff, while this takes 50 energy, it's a 2-minute cooldown, and takes the enemy out of sight from others. I guess it could be used to kill somebody who's like really low health, but it's like, in most cases when you got someone really low health, you already got it locked on the lockdown. You're rotating cooldowns, you're trying to cross CC, you are trying to line up for a kill. You're probably on your way to scoring the kill, and you just need a little bit extra of an oomph. Chances are you're not going to take Shadowy Duel for that extra of an oomph. You're going to take Phantom Assassin or Thieves Bargain for more of damage to get that setup and get more opportunities for that setup, rather than wait for when the target is low and then finish them off in a Shadowy Duel. But that's just me, and that's just how I would use the ability. And by saying how I would use it, basically I'm saying I would never use Shadowy Duel. But I could be alone in this issue. Let me know in the comments below how you feel. And that is everything I have for you guys in terms of talents. I think I talked about them as excessive as I could. I think I've been making as many excessive Legion beta videos as possible. But the beta is going to be over soonish. I could be wrong on that one. Beta is supposed to be coming down to a closing very soon. So we'll see how it goes from there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below about all the talents of Rogue. Which one would you like to keep? Which one would you like to take away? And if you have any questions, concerns, or anything about the talents I talked about, or your own thoughts, feel free to share with me. If you guys want to prove me wrong on how each and every single talent I talked about would be bad, how they could be used, and why they are viable, feel free to write me down in comments below. I'm completely fine with being wrong here. I'm just trying to open another video up for discussion, just a conversation. And if you guys can prove me wrong, that's fine. I mean, honestly, what I'm trying to do right now is just make sure rogues come out to be at the best state possible. I don't want to have some weak classes and weak specs happen in the game, and I want to have the opportunity to be able to choose what I want to play in terms of class talents, PvP talents, and such. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know all the discussions in the comments below. My name is Dalaran, and I'll see you guys in the next video.